contacted Rebecca Shower. So Rebecca was from Stone Living Lab, and she has set all this organization together so we can all work together and continue educating the public and being involved in our communities of East Boston, specifically about the Wicked High Tides. So this is one of the locations that we're going to be talking about the Wicked High Tides, but there's other locations where Rebecca is.
People are going to be down over at Long Wharf. Usually see some significant flooding with every Wicked High Tide, and also down near Four Point Channel by the Children's Museum. There's usually some significant flooding there, and especially there, I think there are some features where, like, benches are underwater. It's just I think the public who might be less aware of this as a concern. That's a visually like a more jarring image to see, like, things that are clearly not meant to be submerged in water under the tide. So
yeah. So I think the last Wicked High Tides that happened was about a month ago, and me and Thea, we were able to see it at Long Wharf. So it was kind of, I don't know if you all have ever been in Long Wharf, even when the Wicked High Tides were occurring, but literally you can see it's like the dock and the water was going over the dock and coming up to the stairs. So that's kind of like illustrating the Wicked High Tides. So today I'm curious to see how high it will get. But the Wicked High Tides is a natural occurrence, but so today is an example of how if climate change continues, the high tides could be this high every single day in about 2050, raising about 5 feet. So that's a big concern about this coastal community, quote unquote, but the water coming in and affecting us all. So it's kind of really important to raise the awareness about the water going on.
We, I think at the Park Service are really interested in learning from all of you. I think, you all who live here in this community, and, when I was talking to Carolina earlier, you were saying, that you've seen this water come up frequently and consistently. And so I haven't spent as much time over here, and I'm just really interested today, and I think we all are, in really learning from you all and how it's affecting you and your communities here in DC.
What makes this of interest to the National Park Service?
So I think, one of our goals is to really build community relationships. And two, I think, all around, the National Parks of Boston in particular we're an urban park. The Charlestown Navy Yard is one of 3 National Parks of Boston locations. The other 2 are Boston African American National Historic Site and Beacon Hill, and the Boston Harbor Islands. So just right there, we have 2 really vulnerable parks in the city, the Boston Harbor Islands and the Charlestown Navy Yard, really vulnerable to coastal change, sea level rise, increased storm surge. And so just, getting out, connecting with the community, raising awareness, I think is definitely of interest to us to connect with people. And also just raise awareness of the vulnerability of our public lands here in Boston.
This is your place, and it's affecting your community. And how can we all work together to help everyone?
So can I ask, do you guys do education too when you're doing tours about, today, will you be doing some publicity as well?
So we actually, the 3 of us are actually, my days of doing general public interpretation, I used to, and not so much anymore. The 3 of us are actually in education and youth engagement, and so we have Thea's our youth volunteer coordinator in a community volunteer ambassador position, and we have a couple of youth employment programs, one of which focuses on exploring careers in public lands. And I think we know that we're going to need in the sector of public lands, we need all of you. You young people who know what's up, know what we need to do. And so we have a few youth employment programs as well to really, because we need young people like you.
So you
working
can share
with
that
us.
with
So.
Latifah and the crew.
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely will. We're gonna coach your youth.
I actually did one of my first internships at the National Park Service at the
Really?
BOF, at the BOF, and it's Charlestown Navy Shipyard.
Oh, awesome.
Can you tell us what's the difference between a wicked high tide and a king tide?
So there is. I mean, so the wicked high tide is a term I think that was coined to kind of remove the like colonial nature of the king tide. And the patriarchal nature of calling it a king tide. So we're trying to, I think, move towards the term wicked high tide to take that kind of patriarchy and colonialism out of the equation. But you know, the king tide or wicked high tide, you know, I'm sure that other people can explain this more aptly than I can, but you know, it's like Melissa said, it's a natural occurrence, and it happens when we are closer to the sun. The daily highs and lows that we see become much higher and much lower. So we see these bigger tidal swings. So while these high tides, you know, the wicked high tide, king tide, whatever you're gonna call it, are predictable, you know, what we do see in this climate emergency is that as we, you know, as humans have caused an increase in global temperature, we see an increase in sea temperature and an increase in sea level. These predictable occurrences become even more extreme, causing, you know, a real problem for vulnerable communities on the coastline. And so I think that you know, that's really the awareness point, is that yes, these are predictable and they've been happening, you know, throughout the age of time. However, we're in a different position today and in current times because of sea level rise and climate change.
What's the official scientific name?
That's a great question. I'm gonna botch this. It's a Perigean tide, Perigean spring tide. So you have spring tides and neap tides. Neap tides, yeah, this is where I'm not up on my science, but the spring tides are the high tides, I think. And so the perigean is the word, that scientific word for what we then call the king tide or the wicked high tide. That's the term we give it when we're talking about the elliptical nature of the Earth's orbit.
Can you just explain how much larger it is today than normal, and how much more this could change if we had like storm surge?
This is like it's 2 to 4 feet higher than normal is what is happening today.
On a calm, you know, day where we don't have a lot of wind out in the harbor pushing water up onto into the inner harbor. So, you know, that's on a good day. It can be really significant. If you're caught in a you know, significant nor'easter or coastal storm, and that also coincides with a wicked high tide, I mean, the impact can be pretty devastating.
I would say, again, Noah, we made a video last year about what would happen. You may or may not have seen it.
No, I haven't, but I'd
Well,
love to.
we'll send it to you and you
Yeah,
can use
that-
it as well.
Yeah.
But it does show, you know, with a bad storm, if you know, it gets really bad, then it's going to go down into the tunnels, right?
This is my first time in Boston, but I live further down south. So Virginia Beach, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's already continuing to be underwater. So like a heavy rain, it's like with climate change and sea level rise and the heavy rain, it's like I've been there and it's like flooding. And even in my community, I'm like from Delaware normally, we have coastal communities and like there's a lot of small fishing communities, and then there's like a huge documentary that like the roads are like underwater, the towns are underwater, and it's like kind of sinking. So since it's all further down south, you know, it's like all the sea level rise is affecting those areas more. But then we're thinking about being in Boston relatively, even though we're higher up north almost, it's like climate change is going to be something that's going to be affecting everyone, like in a variety of different scales, and even worse to vulnerable populations.
And like while all this awareness is important, while it all sounds a lot like doom and gloom, the sea level rises that have been predicted are going to happen and will come, but we can still work towards preventing it from coming up higher, and hopefully work towards, if possibly, reversing some of the damage we have done with our greenhouse emissions. And we can all, as individuals, make changes. Public transit, maybe not driving as much. Simply like just turning off our lights. Not leaving the water running for too long when you're brushing your teeth, turning it off in between. So we can all help work towards reducing the amount that the sea level will rise, but it will come.